I'm David Hunt, and welcome to Bent TV. My guest today, oh gosh, he's done so much. Listen to this, he's an award winner, he's including an honour from royalty. He has met Mandela. He's semi-retired, but he's a control freak, so he can't retire. So let's talk to him. His name is Peter Brokenshire. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here.
All these things that you've done, like the royalty, Mandela, what is it that your career would involve?
I used to open and manage purpose-built convention centres in various parts of the world. Initially in Australia, starting off with the Adelaide Convention Centre, the first purpose-built convention centre in Australia, then to Canberra, then to Melbourne, then to Perth. But then I was given the opportunity to go and work in Malaysia and South Africa to open centres there, and I took that opportunity. I think it's wonderful if people can have that experience of living and working overseas in different cultures.
Before we start talking about that, because there are so many wonderful stories, let's go back. You, as a little tacker, are you a Melbourne boy?
Yes, born in Melbourne. We lived in Hawthorn and then moved out to Waverley.
Waverley, that would have been sort of almost farmland back in the...
Oh, no, not quite farmland, but it was certainly a new development. My father was a returned serviceman, so we had a Defence Forces land allocation. And my parents built there in the early 70s.
School? You went to school out in that part of the world?
I went to Q High School.
Right.
And when we lived in Hawthorn, I went to Auburn South State School. We didn't have a lot of money, and of course the pleasures were simpler then, growing up in the 50s. The big difference was my father was a sportsman. He'd been an Australian rules footballer. He played for Collingwood and Carlton.
Wow.
And so my parents had a wonderful cross-section of friends, and a large group of friends. So growing up, you had this very wide cross-section of people who you interacted with, and they were from all walks of life.
Siblings?
Yes, one younger brother.
Right.
Couldn't be more different. Different as chalk and cheese.
With a father playing VFL, it would have been then, and now AFL, of course. Was there pressure on you to be a sports person? No,
there wasn't. My parents gave me the opportunity to learn sports. If I expressed an interest when I wanted to start playing football, my father took me to T.W. Sherrin, and Tommy Sherrin helped me select my first football.
Whoa.
So, it was very privileged in that way.
Yeah.
Certainly you're given the opportunity, but there was no pushing. I've never been a good sportsman.
Okay.
My interests have been more artistic and cultural.
So school life, did you enjoy it?
I loved school.
Yeah,
loved school. Enjoyed it very much, and had a wonderful group of friends at school. And you had opportunity to do drama and music and those sorts of things. As I say, not so much sport for me.
Yeah.
But the Q High School was a wonderful school to go to.
What happened when you left school?
I left school and went initially as a trainee school teacher at Toorak Teachers College.
Okay.
But after just over a year, I decided teaching wasn't for me. So I then became a hotel management trainee for a suburban hotel group called Courtham's, and worked there for a while. And then I was called up for national service.
Oh.
So I spent 18 months in the Army. And because I was in the Army when Labor came to power in 1972, if you stayed in and completed your 18-month commitment, you qualified for a whole lot of things, including a Defence Forces home loan and tertiary education. So I used my tertiary education grant to go to William Anglis. So I did a course at William Anglis, and then after that joined the Australian Public Service. And worked at the Palais for a while. So, a fairly broadly based hospitality background.
Here you are, national service. Were you shocked when you got called up? Was it?
It's the only lottery I've ever won.
And it's not one that you want to win.
But look, I look back on my time in the Army as a very happy time.
Okay.
And it was...
The discipline and all that, were you fine with that?
I'm a fairly disciplined person anyway.
Okay.
But the army was wonderful, and the camaraderie.
Yep.
And of course, Vietnam was winding down then, so I didn't have to go to...
So there was no threat there?
No threat
Right.
of Vietnam. So I enjoyed my time there, and I was at Puckapunyal, and then I ended up doing my last 6 months in at Victoria Barracks here
Right.
in Melbourne.
Did you realise you were gay by that stage?
Oh, very actively,
Yeah?
but never on army property.
Right, okay. So how, you would have been closeted?
Well, you had to be in those days because it was still illegal.
Yep.
And so, but there was always this wonderful underground in Melbourne. And from a reasonably young age, I had some wonderful friends who introduced me to their friends. And that's the way it worked in Melbourne. You were invited to parties and dinners and that sort of thing. And it was all a very safe and secure environment that you interacted in.
But there were hotels, though, that were known. I wasn't living here because I'm originally from Adelaide. But I've been told over the years that there were a few hotels that particular bars.
There was the Woolshed Bar at the Australia Hotel.
Yep.
And of course, saunas were a lot more active in those days.
Yep.
And opposite the Australia Hotel, you used to have Michael Bushi's. That's where people met and got off. And it was very underground. But because I had some good friends.
Yep.
And moved in a circle, it was very good.
What about your parents? Did you tell them?
No, I didn't tell them. There was an incident, so they found out, and my father was very upset.
Was he?
And it affected our relationship in later years.
Oh, that's
he couldn't cope with it.
Really? Because it's often the dads that are the ones that accept it more than mums in the beginning. So do you regret that your friendship wasn't there with your father, or the father-son relationship?
Of course you do, because your parents are very important in your life. And I think we both missed some opportunities.
What about AIDS? How did that affect you?
Well, I lost a lot of friends.
Yep.
And I was very lucky because I was over in the United States in the late 1970s. And getting up to all sorts of things, so I was very lucky because people weren't as aware of what how you caught the disease and the precautions you needed to take.
Now let's get back to your career. Here you are. You did the course. Where was the first big move in the convention world for you?
Well, going to Adelaide,
right?
And that happened because the company I was working for in Perth had the contract to do all the catering for the first F1 in Adelaide. So because I'd had some protocol experience with the Commonwealth Government, they flew me over to Adelaide to look after the pits where all the drivers were in the VIP pavilion.
Yeah.
And the company at that stage was negotiating the contract for the Adelaide Convention Centre, the catering contract for that. So after the F1, they said to me, look, would you like to come over to Adelaide permanently and be Director of Catering at the Adelaide Convention Centre? So I jumped at it.
And that was pretty prestigious in the day, wasn't it, that convention centre?
It was. Well, it was the first one in Australia.
Yeah.
And Peter van der Hoeven, the first CEO, he was a dynamo, and it was groundbreaking. And I think the centre set the standard. I can remember us having a conversation one day about coffee break and how we'd handle that. And we had two options. Do you go the China cup and saucer route or the American route with the paper cups? And we decided we'd go the China cup and saucer, and that set the standard. And the centres within Australia have all adopted that level.
What was it like living in Adelaide? Being a Melbourne boy.
I loved it.
Adelaide, yeah.
I lived in North Adelaide.
Yep.
I had a lovely townhouse and a beautiful garden setting. Adelaide was very good to me. And of course, I loved the vineyards, and being in the industry I was in, you'd get invited to special tastings and that sort of thing. So it was a wonderful place to be.
And the arts was very
amazing,
active.
amazing.
There.
And when I was there, Andrew Noblet was was still alive, and he was deputy head of tourism. And so he introduced me to a lot of theatre and stage and drama in Adelaide.
And because the convention centre is right next door to
Yes, it is.
The festival centre. So after that, where did you move to?
Well, from there I went to Canberra.
Yeah.
And opened the National Convention Centre in Canberra.
Wow.
But I was only there for 12 months, and then moved to Melbourne, to the World Congress Centre in Melbourne, which is the forerunner of the current Melbourne Exhibition and Convention Centre.
What's it like moving from one city to another? Did you enjoy it?
Look, it's wonderful because you meet a whole new group of people.
Yep.
It's a nuisance having to pack up and go to a new city and start up again. But when you're working in an industry as active as I do, it's not difficult to meet people and get to know people. And so I enjoyed it, and it created wonderful friendships that endure to this day.
And what you just said then, you're like meeting new people, and that's the great thing about that sort of job, is that all of a sudden your friends become people that you're working with, and they're interesting people in their own right, aren't they?
And also, the centre was very good to me. I broke my shoulder at one stage, so they said, look, all your meals will be made by the kitchen. And I extended that and said, well, I like to entertain on a Sunday. So I'd go to St Peter's, and then after church go via the centre kitchen and pick up lunch, and I'd have 8 or 10 or 12 people to lunch on a Sunday. And that was a wonderful way to get to know people.
You just mentioned going to St Peter's. You're quite religious.
I wouldn't say quite religious, but yeah, I have
You go on a regular basis still?
Yes, I attend All Saints in East St Kilda.
Why? What do you get out of your religion?
Oh, I think that there's a serenity. I have a faith. I have a belief, and it adds a very important dimension to my life.
Here you are. You're like groundbreaking centres that you've been working in. How did you get to go overseas? When was the first big move for you?
Well, it was after a long lunch one Friday, and I had a phone call from a headhunter who said, would you be interested in going up to Malaysia? And I said, okay. So the next weekend I was on a plane up to Kuala Lumpur, and we negotiated a contract, and within 2 months I was on a plane up to Malaysia for my first stint there at the Putra World Trade Centre, which was a re-engineering exercise. And then from there I was again headhunted to go to South Africa, to Durban, for the new convention centre in Durban.
Here you are in South Africa, and I mentioned at the top of the interview, Mandela. How did you meet him? Was it through the convention centre?
Initially, yes.
Yeah.
He actually opened the Durban Convention Centre, but he was just the most amazing man. He had this aura about him, and he came to the centre quite regularly. One of the events he came for was the closing ceremony of the World AIDS Conference.
Oh, wow.
The way it was structured, he arrived and was met by the organising committee, and then they went into the room, and he was taken into a holding room for about 40 minutes. So we had a private discussion for about 40 minutes, and he was very open about criticism of some African leaders, which I won't go into. And then it came time to go into the room where the closing ceremony was. And it was a room designed for about 3,000 people, and there would have been about 7,000 people there.
Whoa.
And he comes into the room, and they're all cheering and clapping, and the women are ululating, that sound that African women make.
Yep.
And they're all moving forward, and his security detail is getting a little bit edgy. But he's got his arm on my shoulder, because when he was on Robben Island, the guards, we used to push rifle butts into his feet. So I take him up onto the stage, and he puts his hands up at the lectern and goes like that, and to a person, they all sit down. Just amazing, the hairs on the back of your head raise.
Yeah. And what was that speech like that he did? Because that was the other wonderful thing about him. He was a great speech maker.
Well, the whole AIDS conference in Durban had been marred by the fact that the at that stage, the South African government wouldn't recognise that there was a nexus between HIV and AIDS, and had been taking out multiple page editorials in the local newspapers. So Mandela said, you know, something must be done, and I will ensure that something is done. He was no longer president then, but he was still, of course, a great force for good and for change. So he set the tone and got the conference back on track.
Where did you move to next?
Came back to Australia for a year to open the Perth Convention Centre. And then again, I was tapped on the shoulder to go up to Kuala Lumpur.
Oh, back there?
Back there to open a new centre, the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre.
Peter, you must pinch yourself and go, wow, this has been an amazing career. But you've obviously been very good at what you do and dedicated to the role.
Well, I'd say two things.
Yep.
My mother had two wonderful expressions. And one is, there's only one place where achievement comes before effort, and that's in the dictionary. So if you're prepared to put in the effort, you know, you will have a degree of success.
Yep.
The other thing that she used to say was that if I fell out of an aircraft, I'd fall onto a pile of feather mattresses.
Oh, wow.
So I've been lucky.
Yep. But no, I disagree with you. You've created your luck, and it's not luck. You've created your brilliant career.
Oh, I've been lucky too. Right place at the right time.
Okay. Tell us some of the funny things that must happen along the way, because there were, you know, like everything looks, if they're running smoothly at these huge convention centres.
It's a bit like the Swan on top of the water and you're paddling for dear life underneath. Well, I mentioned a couple of funny ones. A lion getting loose in the World Congress Centre.
What?
General Motors had this advertising agency, and they decided that they'd put this live lion in a Perspex box for a car launch.
Yep.
But they didn't construct it very well. So the lion was in this box and was able to knock out a panel and ended up in the plenary hall, running around the plenary hall. Fortunately, before it was during one of the rehearsals.
Yeah.
That was one thing. And
was it didn't attack anyone? It was fairly tame.
Well, yeah, but we had to bring in somebody from Melbourne Zoo to fire a tranquilizer pellet and get it to calm down. Yeah, it was quite scary.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be.
The other one was the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh arriving in Durban for CHOGM, and the British Deputy High Commissioner in Durban, Debbie Goldthorpe, phoned me and said, because we had mobile phones then, and said, look, we're leaving the Royal Hotel now and we'll be there in 3 minutes.
Yep.
So I went over to the Deputy Chief of Protocol for South Africa and I said, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are leaving the Royal Hotel. They'll be here in 3 minutes. He said, oh, man, don't be silly. We'll give them a call when we're ready. And at this stage, the then President Thabo Mbeki and Chief Anuka, the head of the Commonwealth, are on the other side of the foyer welcoming all of the dignitaries who are coming in through a secure entrance, because the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh came in through the front door. So with that, I walked out to the front door to the edge of the red carpet, and the Queen's motorcade is coming up the drive. And the Queen and the Duke had been at the centre the day before, so the Queen said, I wasn't expecting to... Good morning, Your Majesty. And the Queen said, well, I wasn't expecting to see you this morning, Mr. Brokenshire. And shook the Duke's hand, and then I can see a wry smile and the Queen looking over my shoulder. And I said, is there a fair bit of activity behind me? And she said, yes, there is. And there's Chief Anuka and Thabo Mbeki sprinting across the foyer.
That's very funny. Why people like that sometimes, where they think, oh, no, we know what's going on, when you knew exactly what was going on and you took control. What is it about people in those situations at a big events like you would be involved in all the time? Why do people always think that they know best?
Well, I think with some of them it's inexperience.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't had to deal with those sorts of events very often, you don't understand what goes behind it and what the procedures are. For example, with the Americans, there's a totally different set of criteria for entertaining the President of the United States. I can remember when George H.W. Bush came to Melbourne. I can remember one Sunday afternoon I was with David Ford, the Victorian Chief of Protocol at the time, and David had prepared a folder, along the lines of a royal visit, and this chap from the White House advance team, Bob Athey, came in, and he took one look at it and ripped it in half. And he said, "We'll start again." So David Ford turned to me and he said, "Peter, I'll leave this to you." And we then started walking around the centre on a Sunday, and they were concerned that the President would come in through the loading dock, secure area that they could close off, up in a goods lift, and then into what they called hold areas. And that was what they wanted to do. So the event was structured around the ability to deliver those things, whereas for the British royal family, for example, they're front door people, and there is a different set of protocol parameters.
And why do you think it is like that? It's all about security, I suppose, with the Americans.
More and more today.
Yeah. Where the royal family, it is all about being seen, isn't it?
But even with royalty now, there is a secure element, but it varies from family to family and country to country.
Yeah. On all your travels and time spent living around the world, was art, like something that you'd think, I'm going to buy a piece of art from each place I go? Did that enter into your head?
Oh yes, and I did.
Yeah.
I have quite a lot of art from various parts of the world. I was in Austria once, in Salzburg, in the central square there that you'd remember from The Sound of Music.
Yep.
And this young artist was painting a painting of the scene, and I said to him, "I'll buy that when you're finished." So that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's true memories, and it's true, it's not something that's going to be worth a fortune.
No.
Maybe it is. Maybe he's famous now, and you don't know.
I've had a couple of good buys, but I don't think that was one of them.
Okay. And what is it that catches your eye when it comes to art? Is there anything? It's just because that was the moment, it looked pretty good, or is there something in particular that you look for?
Well, I think when you're travelling, though, you're sightseeing, so it's the vision of the city that you're in, and I think that's what I look for. More than that, I don't like portrait paintings. I'm more a landscape person.
Okay, so there's not portraits of you everywhere in your apartment or house? No. What about architecture? Like the places you've been in, it's a lot of it is in Asia. Does architecture interest you?
It does, and a lot of the buildings, all of the buildings I've worked in have been new buildings. So you're used to that sort of modern architecture. But in terms of my own liking, when I'm going to stay at a hotel, I prefer an older hotel like the Windsor and those sorts of places.
Yep. Now, you're retired, but semi-retired. What keeps you going? Why are you still working?
Because the opportunity is still there,
Yep.
and because the boards I'm still on, the organisations feel that I can still make a contribution, and the company who contract me on a consultant basis believe that I can still do things for them, and I'm happy to do it. I think it helps you to keep you young, helps to keep you active. I couldn't ever just totally not do anything. I do some volunteer work as well. So.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of your experience is so valuable on the organisations that you would be involved with. Younger people coming through, of course they're going to bring new ideas and whatever, but that wealth of experience that you bring would be one of the key reasons you'd be so well liked.
It is, and that's why in Malaysia particularly, I was on a number of curriculum advisory councils. I was working for 3 universities on their advisory boards, because I think it's important that you do give your time, you do give your expertise, and you can through that experience, you can give another dimension which somebody younger with lesser experience wouldn't possibly be able to give.
Now, we've mentioned the Queen, that you've met the Queen, okay. Mandela, yep, yeah, you know him reasonably well. There's an honour that you were given by royalty. What was that?
Oh, that was a Malaysian honour.
Yeah.
And it was a datukship, which is the Malaysian equivalent of a knighthood.
Wow.
So within Malaysia, they call me Datuk Peter, but
Right,
I never
okay.
used that here in Australia.
Datuk. Why did you get it?
For services to Malaysia, on the recommendation of the then Prime Minister, for work in establishing the convention centre, and we'd just done ASEAN and some other important events for the government, and the Prime Minister was very happy.
Yeah. Peter, what did that mean to you? You know, like how do you look back on that? And you know, because that's such a great honour, isn't it?
It is, and it's very humbling. But I always believe that any award, any honour, is a reflection not just of me, but of the team I work with.
Oh.
And without all of their contributions, you know, I wouldn't look good. So it's very much a team effort, and to a large extent, you accept it on behalf of the team.
But it is a leadership role as well. That, you know, like the team's only as good as the person that's steering the boat as well. That's my
yeah, but
my
or conversely, you're only as good as your weakest link.
True. Yes. With COVID, we all stopped, and how hard is that for somebody like you that's so active and travelling the world? You know, like what's it like that all of a sudden there's a year that, you know, like the brakes are on and you're at home? You know, did you find that difficult?
No, not too difficult. I live on my own, but also I have some great friends, and one of whom is an Anglican priest whom you know. And we created a bubble, and friends of mine who have a restaurant, they prepared meals. So it was fine. You know, you were able to keep in touch. And I was also very lucky in that a number of friends sort of put me on their telephone lists and would phone me every week or two. So you had regular phone calls with people, and it wasn't just a minute phone call. It was you know, half an hour or so.
Yeah.
So I was very, very blessed in that respect as well.
You mentioned your brother at the top of the interview, and very different from you. Do you have much to do with him? Are you in contact with him?
More so since I've moved back to Australia, of course. We had lunch just the other day, and we do regularly. We're now in a better place in terms of our relationship than we've been in a long, long time.
What about you? Has there been long-term relationships?
Yes, a couple. One in particular for about 5 years when I was living in Canberra and then in Melbourne. But he was married with a family, and so it was challenging.
That would have been challenging. Do you wish that there was a partner?
Yes and no. I'm fortunate in that I have a number of very good friends.
Yep.
So you have that interaction. There are times when I'm at home at night when I think, oh, it'd be nice to have somebody here. But I think I've reached an age now where I'm happy with the life I have.
Yeah, and that's what you accept. And friends become your family as well. Peter, thank you so much for chatting with us today. So many stories. There would have been a million more that we could have spoken about, but we'll do that another day. My guest today was Peter Brokenshire, and I'm David Hunt, and you'll be watching Ben TV, and we'll see you again real soon.